fantastic initiative. How on earth are we going to pay for it for 60p per child?
Hello, good morning. Yeah, it's great to join you from a very noisy, very busy breakfast club at Denby Primary School here in Luton, and fantastic to see the children taking part. It's a big day for parents as we roll out 750 new free breakfast clubs. On the funding question, look, the funding that we're putting in place is more generous than schemes that came before, and I'm afraid the 60 pence number that gets bandied about just isn't right. That is the daily funding rate for children, but alongside that, schools get an initial start-up grant and they get a termly payment of £1,000. So it is more generous than that. And I've just been speaking with Natalie, the head teacher here, and what she was telling me is that whilst they ran a breakfast club before, and some schools taking part might have done, others won't have done, actually what they're going to be able to do now is to expand what they offer to more children. They've got some hot food options this morning, scrambled egg, baked beans, toast, much more besides. This will make a really big difference to parents. It will be transformative, but also the evidence is clear that it's really good for children's attendance at school, for their behaviour, and actually really good for academic outcomes as well.
Following a historic Supreme Court decision, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson was under close interrogation on Labour's ambitious free breakfast programme from Susanna Reid, first then from Richard Madley in a tense morning encounter. Under close examination, Phillipson battled, and Reid and Madley noted several errors in her responses. Make sure to like and subscribe.
But the thing, OK, I appreciate that the head teacher there might say this is all good news, but the Association of School and College Leaders said that generally head teachers are really worried about the basic daily rate. They say that you're being unrealistic about the costs involved. Meanwhile, another union, the National Association of Head Teachers, says funding could fall short, and that concern needs to be addressed before the programme's rolled out, because there are already huge strains on school budgets. So it seems you're telling head teachers something that they simply don't believe and say in practice is not the reality.
Look, today is the first 750, but actually we had applications from thousands of schools and head teachers across our country. There is big demand and big support for what we're doing, but I think it is important to stress that this is the first 750. We'll roll out breakfast clubs nationally. That's the legislation that we've got going through Parliament at the moment. But we have the opportunity through these first early adopter breakfast clubs to test the funding model to make sure that we're getting everything right ahead of the full national rollout.
Reid swiftly tore apart Phillipson's claims, pointing out that ground floor head teachers essentially disagreed with her.
I just want to talk, staying on the issue of children, the Child Poverty Action Group says that the number of children in poverty is going to increase significantly by the end of this Parliament unless you take urgent action, including lifting the two-child cap on universal credit. Is that something that you are considering?
I'm determined to tackle child poverty. It's what brought me into politics. I care about this really, really deeply. I'm leading the work across government with the Work and Pensions Secretary on our Child Poverty Task Force. We got up and running immediately after the election, and we are looking at all areas, nothing's off the table, to make sure that we bring down those numbers of children growing up in poverty, because it doesn't just score their life chances.
Sorry, you could still lift that cap. Well, that hasn't been ruled out.
We're looking at every option, including social security measures, absolutely. But there are a range of ways. Alongside that, we know that we can tackle child poverty, and access to childcare is an important part of that. And the breakfast clubs we're launching today will make a really big difference supporting parents to get to work.
Reid pointed out the clear discrepancy between Labour's pledges and their cautious silence, therefore driving Phillipson into defensive action. Days following a historic Supreme Court decision, Phillipson was under close scrutiny from Richard Madley on Labour's stance, a policy area she personally supervises that clearly must be based on biological sex.
Less than a year ago, in June 24, you gave an interview, an on-the-record interview, where you said that a trans woman with a penis could use women's toilets. Now, the judgment last week would imply that that is no longer possible. Have you changed your mind?
My understanding was based on the guidance at the time. The Supreme Court judgment, as you say, has made crystal clear that when we talk about sex, we're talking about biological sex, and that single-sex spaces, including toilets, but also women's refuges, hospital wards, rape crisis centres, are on the basis of biological sex. Before I became an MP, I used to manage a women's refuge, so I supported thousands of women and children who'd experienced the most terrible abuse from men, from their partners. And I know how essential it is that women in those situations have access to safe therapeutic support, and that's done on a single-sex basis. So I recognise how important it is. As a government, we welcome the ruling and the clarity that the Supreme Court has brought to this area.
Well, that's a very, very clear response. Thank you for that. Why haven't we had similar clarity from your boss, from the Prime Minister? 6 days now since this judgment was made, and we have no clue as to what Sir Keir Starmer thinks about it.
Well, I'm sure if you have the chance to put that question to him, he'll answer in the same way that I've answered. I speak for the government on this matter. I am the Minister for Women and Equality, so I'm responsible for this policy area. And what I've said to you and to your viewers this morning is government policy. We welcome the clarity that the Supreme Court have delivered, and we'll provide further updates in the usual way so that MPs can debate this further.
Well, I would question whether we have to wait to interview the Prime Minister for him to make a statement about his views on this subject, but no time to go too much into that.
Madley was clearly dubious about Phillipson's evasive answer.
OK, you're the Minister responsible.
He'll tell you what I've just said as well.
Sorry, you're the Minister responsible. What is a transgender woman to do if she's in a pub in the next few days, she needs to use the toilet, and there isn't a unisex toilet there, it's just a gents and a ladies? Where would you advise her to go?
So services, including toilets, should be on the basis of biological sex. So individuals should use the service that is provided to their biological sex. But I would just slightly push this point that there aren't alternatives available, because many businesses, including small businesses in recent times, do now provide unisex provision or single cubicles that can be used by anyone. So you'll have the toilet and the wash basin in a self-contained cubicle, so that the dignity and privacy of whoever that person is can be maintained and respected.
Yes, that obviously, where those facilities exist, that is the third option. But I'm asking you, what if those facilities don't exist? And I mean, I actually can't think of a pub near me where there is a unisex toilet. It's all ladies and gents. So you're saying that a transgender woman in those circumstances has to go to the gents?
People should be using facilities on the basis of biological sex, yes. But what I would also add is, I actually have seen lots of examples, including from small family-run businesses, where they do provide often maybe one cubicle or a few cubicles that are on the basis. And my experience is that is my experience. Now, the Equality and Human Rights Commission will be setting out further guidance to providers as quickly as they can, in order for some of those questions to be absolutely nailed down. But I would hope that a business in the situation that you had described would make sure that that person can access toilet facilities in a safe and dignified way. But the Supreme Court is clear that it's on the basis of biological sex.
So if a transgender woman, as we've seen in recent days, because they've been posting pictures of themselves using ladies' toilets against the advice or against the guidance from the Supreme Court last week, if a transgender woman goes into a ladies' toilet, you think that the manager of the pub concerned would have the right to bar her?
Madley showed Labour's policy remained ambiguous notwithstanding the Supreme Court decision by forcefully exposing Phillipson's confusion and doubt regarding real-world scenarios.
I mean, I actually can't think of a pub near me where there is a unisex toilet. It's all ladies and gents. So you're saying that a transgender woman in those circumstances has to go to the gents?
People should be using facilities on the basis of biological sex, yes. But what I would also add is, I actually have seen lots of examples, including from small family-run businesses, where they do provide often maybe one cubicle or a few cubicles that are on the basis. And my experience is that is my experience. Now, the Equality and Human Rights Commission will be setting out further guidance to providers as quickly as they can.
Phillipson's ongoing deferrals to future direction pointed to Labour's lack of instantaneous clarity or readiness. Susanna Reid and Richard Madley revealed serious shortcomings in Labour's policy justification and plans. Reid deftly refutes Phillipson's assertions on the financial viability of Labour's breakfast programme, while Madley finds clear inconsistencies in her reaction to transgender rights, following the Supreme Court decision. Labour's attempts to turn off left-leaning voters on important policy issues erode Phillipson's reputation.